Urella support people with a disability with supported accommodation. We have people supported in apartments, units and houses by themselves, or they may choose to live with one other individual. We also have supported accommodation homes, and we have 3 to 5 clients living in a home at a time. The house from the front, you can be driving past and it just looks like every other residential home. In each of the houses we have staff supporting them, generally 24/7. The staff are disability support workers. So when a client goes into hospital from one of our supported accommodation homes, we give the hospitals lots of documentation and information about each of our clients that we support, and this information is really important in supporting the individual. At times we've found that either that information has been lost, it hasn't been read, and the individual, when they're in hospital, is not supported the way that they need to. Other than documentation, how they can get the information about the client is actually going directly to the client themselves and asking them, what do you need? How can we best support you? And I think sometimes hospital staff underestimate the client and don't ask. Another way of getting information is speaking to the families directly, and also the house manager and house staff. They've been supporting those individuals for many years, and they're a wealth of knowledge as well. We once had a client who was in hospital for 14 days, and during that time the nursing staff didn't wash their hair, brush her hair for that whole duration. She was physically unable to do it, and she needs support with that. So at the end of the stay, when she was discharged, her hair was fully matted, and it resulted in her needing to go to the hairdressers and get her hair cut short. That's not what she wanted, that's not what she chose, and unfortunately those support needs weren't met whilst in hospital. That same client is unable to physically feed herself, and during her stay there was a number of times where the nurses didn't support her feeding her, and then when the catering staff came around, they would take her meal away from her. So she went a few times without eating, breakfast, lunch and tea. Early discharge planning is vital to make sure that we have a safe transition from hospital to home for the client with the disability. So it's about getting all stakeholders involved early on. The client, most importantly, their family, the manager from the house, any relevant support staff, and then the people that are involved in the care in the hospital. Early conversations will lead to a better discharge at the end of the day. It's really important that the hospital inform us exactly when the discharge is going to be, so we can plan the right time for the client to return home. We once had a person discharged from hospital and we weren't notified that they were coming home. That house wasn't staffed 24/7, and they came back with patient transport and there was nobody here. They weren't able to get into their own home, and they had to wait 3 hours out the front of their home with patient transport until the afternoon staff attended and found them outside. Whilst a client's in hospital, at times their care needs can change. So they may have been using a walking frame, for example, but now their care needs are greater and they're in a wheelchair, need to be hoist transferred. And we need to ensure that when they're coming home, that our staff have had the relevant training and documentation updated to reflect the increase in support needs. We also need to make sure that there's enough funding in the client's NDIS plan, because they might have only needed one person to support with their transfer, and now they need 2 staff members, but have they got the right funding? So whilst they're medically stable, their support needs may have changed. So these discussions with the house manager and the client is really important to support these discharges. We had a client, and whilst they were in hospital, they had a catheter in situ and they were discharged with that catheter. We don't have nursing staff at our homes, and in order to support somebody with that, we would need external nurses coming in. When they came home without us knowing, we weren't able to support them, so they had to go back to hospital to have that support in hospital. A big thing we find on discharge, if a client is discharged and their medication has changed, they come home and it's not written up on our Urella medication chart. So if we can have those discussions earlier, get the hospital doctors to write it up on our forms, get it Webster pack, it makes the transition home easier and the medication can be given as soon as they return. A great discharge from hospital to home is a real collaborative approach, and it's all of us speaking together, the client, the hospital staff and the house staff. It's worked really well when we've had early discussions. We've said, hey, let's do a discharge on a Tuesday. We've got the right staffing levels, there's a manager there, we've got all the medication organised, documentation. The hospital are happy at their end and so are we, and that makes a great, safe and thorough discharge for the individual with the disability home.